What's happening in Georgia and beyond. I want to bring in my political panel. Sabrina Rodriguez is here. She's a national political reporter for the Washington Post. Keith Boykin is here, a former Clinton White House aide. And Brian Robinson is here, a Republican strategist and president of Robinson Republic. Okay, we just had an icon. Keith, your reaction from what you just heard from Ambassador Young on the importance of Georgia?
Well, I think Andrew Young is right. And I think Raphael Warnock comes from that same tradition of Andy Young and John Lewis and Julian Bond, tradition of Black leaders in the state of Georgia, the tradition of Martin Luther King as well. And it's sad that this race has gone into a runoff in Georgia because clearly Herschel Walker is not part of the tradition. He is an embarrassment to the state of Georgia and to the Republican Party. He's become a punchline to the Republican Party on Saturday Night Live. And Raphael Warnock is busy talking about policy, and Herschel Walker is instead talking about werewolves and vampires and coons. The choice couldn't be clearer for the people of the state of Georgia.
You know, Sabrina, I actually want to talk about some recent reporting by you and your colleagues at the Post. You all write, and you write that Republican operatives on the ground in Georgia, that they're growing nervous about Walker's prospects. What are they saying to you? And I want to note that Brian is a Republican operative on the ground in Georgia, but we're going to get to Brian in a second. Sabrina, tell us what the reporting says.
You know, the reporting has just shown us that in the weeks leading up to the runoff, there has just been an increasing concern that Walker isn't going to be able to pull it off. Heading into this runoff, we saw that, Warnock was ahead by about 36,000 votes, even if he didn't hit the 50% required to win outright. And then we saw the big gap between the votes that Governor Brian Kemp got and what Walker got. And one of the things that we're seeing now in the final days of him campaigning is tomorrow, for example, he's heading to mostly North Georgia, one of the areas where there was the biggest gap between support for Kemp and Walker. So he really has had to make up for that. And a lot of, operatives on the ground are saying, we handed him Kemp on a silver platter to campaign for him, to put him in TV ads, to come and, help beef up his campaign. He hasn't necessarily taken, the opportunity. He hasn't been as aggressively on the campaign trail and talking. And it's just a real concern for a lot in the party.
Brian, do you agree? Well, one, do you share this sentiment? But is this also what you've heard from fellow strategists and Republicans in Georgia?
Well, as far as his chances go, the Democrats have banked hundreds of thousands of votes already. We're going into Tuesday with Raphael Warnock being hundreds of thousands of votes ahead, in my estimation, and of other Republicans who are looking at the data coming in. So Herschel Walker on Election Day in November got 220,000 more votes than Warnock did. Warnock beat him in the early vote and absentees. So Walker is going to have a massive turnout on Tuesday. And Sabrina just mentioned North Georgia. Those North Georgia mountain counties have got to come out in force. And I know she's not popular necessarily with this political panel, but people like Marjorie Taylor Greene need to help get the strong Republican base out to the polls. Yes, he did lag behind Kemp a little bit. Kemp is out there lending his political capital at the moment. But Tuesday is going to be a big day for Republicans, and it's make or break.
All right, well, we will be watching on Tuesday. I want to remind folks at home that there's no more early vote. Tuesday is the last day to get it done. All right, I want to talk about something that has been in the news. Democrats are moving to restructure the Democratic primary order in 2024. They're talking about moving, and not just in 2024, beyond, honestly. They're talking about moving South Carolina to the front of the line, ousting Iowa, and then adding Georgia to the first 5 primaries, keeping New Hampshire in the mix. Keith, talk a little bit about this strategy here and who does it benefit most in 2024? And I just have to note, if President Biden does decide to run for re-election, as he has said he intends to do, there will not be a primary.
Well, what happened in 2020, as you recall, Simone, is that we had a lot of diverse candidates in the Democratic Party primary lineup, but very few of them made it very far, in part because of the way we set up the system with Iowa and New Hampshire at the beginning, and South Carolina, which has the largest percentage of Black voters of the early states, doesn't come until the end of February. So I think this is really important to move South Carolina up to the front, because Black voters, first of all, are the most most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party. And I think black voters should have a voice in choosing who the Democratic nominee is going to be before Iowa and New Hampshire, which are completely unrepresentative of the party in terms of the constituency that shows up, get a chance to put their fingers on the scale, if you will. So I support this move. I also like the idea of putting Nevada in there and Michigan and Georgia into the lineup. Get some states there that are reflective of the diversity of the population. Iowa and New Hampshire are not those states that are reflective of the diversity of the population of the Democratic Party.
The people in the Midwest are going to be mad at you, Keith, but you have told not one lie, my friend.
The truth is the truth.
I want to move on to my least favorite subject before I let y'all go. I'm talking about former President Donald Trump. He's just hard to avoid. I mean, he recently called for suspending the United States Constitution and appointing himself president based on more false claims about the election. And he said this on his social media site. This was 2 weeks after House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy vowed that Republicans would read the Constitution aloud on the House floor on their first day in Congress. Brian, there are many Republicans who say that they're strict constitutionalists. What is your reaction to Donald Trump's absurd suggestion? And it's not even a suggestion. It is just something that cannot happen. It literally blows my mind. Where are the Republicans landing on this?
Well, let's certainly hope it can't happen. I think in recent years, we've all kind of become concerned for the future of our democracy, but for actions on both sides, at least from the view of this Republican. I think Republicans are going to begin, and have already begun, to react differently to things that former President Trump says. Before, there was a reflexive defense, simply because if you stood up to him within the party, you would be destroyed, like your political career would be over. We've seen that break. And guess who broke it, Simone? Georgia, because we reelected Brian Kemp, got him to the primary, and then gave him a big margin in this November. He was the first guy to successfully stand up to Trump and win, and I think he bent the arc of this story.
People are saying that Brian Kemp might have some bigger aspirations. We might need to talk about that on another day. Sabrina Rodriguez, Keith Boykin, Brian Robinson, thank you all very, very much.